Are you feeling unmotivated with your glute growth progress? I know how frustrating it can be when you've been doing your glute strengthening and hypertrophy exercises consistently for weeks and months, and yet you look in the mirror and your glutes are still looking and feeling the same as before you started your fitness journey. Or if you're somebody who has been lifting in the gym for a while and you want to see how you can optimize your glute growth progress to having more muscular and stronger glutes. If either of those scenarios sounded like you, stick around as I outline for you today the most common and the easiest glute exercises out there that you can and should do if your goal is to maximize glute growth and strength. This video will be focused on exercises that best strengthen and grow your gluteus maximus muscle, which is the predominant hip muscle that makes up our hip region. Then of course, the most important of it all, I will be providing for you my best tips on how to optimize your exercise techniques so you can finally reach your full genetic potential to make the best progress you can to get the glutes of your dreams. In order to get round and full glutes, this will be part 1 of my exercise technique series, where we target our gluteus maximus. Part 2 of this exercise technique series, we will be targeting our gluteus medius and minimus, which serves to give our glutes that pop and that 3D effect to help us round out our backside, as well as to give us that hip stability that a lot of us might be lacking that can be contributing to hip and lower back pain. So stay tuned for that in my future videos. And subscribe if you don't want to miss out. So to get the glutes of your dreams, we'll do this by addressing those most common mistakes that people make so you won't have to make those same mistakes as everybody else and waste months and years of progress, because those mistakes are probably putting a big damper on your fitness progress and hindering your efforts on trying to get your glutes stronger and more muscular. So trust me, once you learn these mistakes and work on correcting them, you'll feel the world of a difference in the execution of these exercises, and the progress you can make in your glutes when you look at yourself in the mirror will be astronomical. And with that behind us, let's get on with the juicy part of this video where we learn the most common mistakes that are probably hindering your glute growth progress, and better yet, on my best tips on how to correct them. So the first exercise we simply cannot not address is the infamous glute bridge. So this exercise is something that I like to teach my clients right away if they have lower extremity issues that can be stemming from weak hips, because this exercise is simple, yet it can target our glute muscles so well. So I'm going to first show you the proper execution of the glute bridge, and then we're going to go over the common mistakes that people make. To properly execute the glute bridge, we want to be on our back, and then your knees, you want to be at about 90 degrees. Your feet are going to be flat with that tripod position. And then when you're coming up, you want to be actively using your glutes to drive up, pushing down through the ground with your tripod feet, and squeezing your butt to come up. As you come down, you want to lead with your hips, relax the glutes, core is engaged, and come back down. So you're going to do that again. You want to drive up from the feet, squeeze your butt to come up, squeeze it the most at the top, and then when you're coming back down, you want to lead with the hips and come back down. So a lot of people, when they're doing the glute bridge, one thing that I see a lot is them arching their back. So this is what they do. They're predominantly trying to use their lower back to extend, and then leading with their back, creating that little arch and rolling down. Again, one more time, going like that, and then rolling down. So when I do see this, it is commonly because they don't know how to have proper core control, so they're using their back instead of their hips to do this movement. So if you do the glute bridge and you feel a lot in your quads or your hamstrings, it could be the positioning of your feet. If you're feeling your quads too much, it could be because your feet are too close to you, and that can cause you to feel like you're using your quads too much. So like that. Another common mistake is if your feet are too far away, and when you're driving up, you feel like your hamstrings you're using a lot of. So going like this. So even doing this right now, I can feel my hamstrings more than my glutes. So this is another very common mistake that I see people make. So with the glute bridge, these are the 3 common mistakes that I see people make. Arching your back, not having good core control, your feet are too far forward, or your feet are too close to you. So those are the most common mistakes. So try to avoid them. The second exercise that is amazing for strengthening and growing our glutes is the hip extension with cable or band. This exercise allows for that crazy mind-muscle connection when done correctly because it is an open chain exercise where it targets the primary function of our gluteus maximus, which is hip extension. Because this exercise is for us to load resistance into hip extension, when this exercise is done properly, this is gold for that glute pump you might be looking for. So I'll show you both the cable and the band later. With this exercise, the most common mistake that I see people do is that they're arching their back when they're doing this. Earlier, I did mention that this exercise targets your hip extension. So we want to make sure our core is engaged when we're doing this. I'm going to show you how to execute this properly. Core is engaged, and when you're kicking back, you don't want to be arching the back. You want to be stemming from the hip, driving back with your hip, again, squeezing your butt, and then come back, squeeze the butt to come up, and then controlled on the way back. Like so. So to do this, you want to have a slight lean forward with the torso so you actually get range of motion into this movement. Now we're going to go onto the mistakes. So with one mistake, it is when people arch their back. So typically it's when people are too upright, and then when they're doing that, they actually stem from the lower back and they're arching their back thinking they're going really high, but they're actually using a lot of their lower back when they're doing this. So this can cause a lot of tight lower backs if you do this very often because you're actually strengthening that lower back instead of the hip. So try to avoid this. And then another thing which is common as well was that torso being too upright. So if your torso is too upright, you have very limited range of motion in that hip extension. So you'll end up wanting to arch the back. To combat that, you want to lean forward, core is engaged. Again, drive back, squeeze, come back, drive back, squeeze, come back, like that. So that is the cable hip extension. So with the band, exact same thing, lean forward slightly and drive back, come back. So that could be a little bit trickier when the band will slide up. But that's essentially how you want to do this. Again, no arching of the back, like that. The third exercise that everyone knows of when we try to grow our glutes is the barbell back squat. In my opinion, even though this exercise is not the best exercise for glute growth, it is a very basic and simple exercise that helps us strengthen our lower body. If your primary intention is to target your glutes and your glutes only, this will not be my go-to, but this exercise can be great if we want to strengthen our legs and hips as a whole, since it is an amazing compound exercise in which we can load with heavy resistance, which as a result will lead to tremendous glute growth. If we learn the proper execution techniques, we can also optimize targeting our glutes as a result instead of our quads. So to do this, proper execution of this so then you can target your glutes, you're going to get your hips back. Pretend you're sitting into a chair, and when you're coming up, you're going to drive with those tripod feet, squeeze your butt to come back up. So make sure your spine is neutral, core is engaged, hips are back, 3 points of contact on your feet. Push through the ground, squeeze your butt to finish the movement. Again, one more time, come down, push through the ground, squeeze your bum to get back into the original position. Like so. So a common mistake that I see people make when they're doing the squat is when they are too far forward. So if your knees are too far forward like that, you're gonna feel that exercise a lot more in your quads. So there's nothing wrong with this squat, but if you do this, just know that you're going to be using your quads more than your glutes. So like that. Make sure then you're driving back. Pretend you're sitting into a chair, so then you can get a little bit more of that glute activation. Another common mistake that I see people do is that arching of the back. So when their core is not strong and they're not stable on their core, they tend to want to stick out their butt like that. And then when they're squatting, they're just really sticking out that butt. And when you're doing that, when you're driving up, again, you're going to be using that lower back for you to get up. Going to be something that can contribute to lower back pain if you do too much of this. So I don't recommend sticking and arching it back too much, like that. Those are the most common mistakes that I see with the squat. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this video addressing the most common mistakes that I see people make when it comes to their glute exercises. I always emphasize on exercise technique and to always train with intention when you're doing your exercises. If you know which muscle in your body or what your training intentions are, and then you go about executing these exercises, you will find much faster progress, whether that is in strength gains or in muscle size gains. Technique is king in my books when it comes to glute strength and hypertrophy gains. So if you're also like me and you would like to get the most bang for your buck with your exercise routine, hit the like button below and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more of me in the future. Otherwise, I really hope to see you in my next video.